For more than a generation, our nation has been fixated on this thought of global competition. And while it's true that our world and its economies have changed significantly, despite our focus on global competition, our economy is still not as strong as it can be. I would argue that if we focus on local issues, that we can make more progress, contributing locally, not competing globally. Today in America, one of the strongest determinants of who ends up poor is who is born poor. And despite all of our talk about the American dream, it has migrated. Today, there's greater economic mobility in Europe than there is in the United States. An American boy born into the bottom 20% in earnings has only a 1 in 12 chance of making it to the top 20% over the course of his lifetime. And that's compared to a 1 in 8 chance in class-conscious Britain. My parents came to the United States from Egypt, and they wanted to start a family that they can provide with a better life. When we were children, my father passed away, and my brothers and I sold candy on school nights and weekends to make ends meet. Even still, our income was supplemented with government aid. We received food stamps, rent subsidies, and Medicaid. And by virtue of growing up in a low-income neighborhood, we went through some of New York City's most struggling public schools. But I loved my father, and our father loved us. And he knew that if he can chase girls away from us at a very young age, that he would raise 3 very bright and dedicated kids who would accomplish so much more. And so he left us with that gift. I was fortunate. I had a series of nonprofits and mentors come into my neighborhood and change my life prospects. 2 years ago, I was the first one in my family to graduate from college, and I turned down my Wall Street job offers to help make sure that I wasn't the last. When I got to Cornell, I met a handful of kids who, just like me, had benefited from the support of nonprofits whose mission it was to help them overcome the effects of the poverty that they faced. Those nonprofits identified certain kids in our neighborhoods as being high potential, and they pulled them out of the communities that they grew up in, and they sent them to elite private schools. Well, guess what? Those kids went on to great schools, they graduated, and they went on to contribute to our global economy. The nonprofits that supported them achieved their goals, but they failed at fulfilling their missions. With that approach, we're never going to address hunger, homelessness, poverty, or the inequalities in our education system. Because I believe that it's the people who grew up in those neighborhoods, who've experienced those problems firsthand, who are best equipped to address them. I'm here today to tell you, don't worry about competing globally. Instead, focus on just what's beyond your backyard. Only once we strengthen our local communities will we be ready to take on the world, and not before then. Despite the fact that we've been teaching our kids to be globally competitive from a young age, we still live in a society where people are poorly educated, they're underemployed, or they live in poverty. Let's take the next 5 or even 10 years, and let's transition to a society where we teach our kids from the very beginning of their education to contribute locally. I decided I would start my talk off with a door, because doors are symbolic of transition. And before the end of my talk, we're going to open this door together, and on the other side will be a future marked by local contribution, a future that will see a better life on the other side. And what do you need to open up a door? You need a key, obviously, right? So we're going to use this key, but this isn't just any key. This is a special key. This key is going to show us exactly what it takes to get to the other side. K, know your community. I want you all to say it with me. Ready? Know your community. In order to affect real change in our communities, we have to understand the problems that they're exhibiting firsthand. The truth is that it is and always will be more powerful to say, I believe in you and you can do it because I did it, than it will be to say, I believe in you and you can do it. It wasn't until I got to college that I learned that eating habits in low-income neighborhoods reduced the life expectancy of the people living there. It wasn't until I got to college that I learned about racial profiling and just how disproportionately the number of low-income people and people of color were arrested every single day. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that the schools I attended my entire life were failing my friends and me. What are the challenges in our communities that we're overlooking? And what can we do about them? E, empower yourself and others. Say it with me. Ready? Empower yourself and others. Empowerment starts with knowledge and awareness. The reality is we can only affect change once we know what those issues are. Practice Makes Perfect, the nonprofit I started, was one of the best accidents that ever happened. In the process of applying to Cornell, I researched a few scholarships, and one of them had to deal with the achievement gap. The United Negro College Fund said they would give $10,000 to a student who can come up with a solution for the achievement gap that involved corporate intervention. I remember at the time I didn't know anything about the problem. I didn't know how corporations worked, but obviously I wanted $10,000 to come to Cornell, and so I learned really quickly. The achievement gap, or the disparity in educational achievement between low-income students and their more affluent peers, was costing our economy between $310 and $525 billion each year. That's billion with a capital B. And that was the economic equivalent of a permanent national recession. There are probably a million different reasons for why the achievement gap exists. But I found out that if you can imagine a pie graph or a pie chart in your minds, and take 2/3 of it, that 2/3 of that achievement gap was directly attributed to unequal summer learning opportunities. Children in low-income neighborhoods forget anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 months of their learning over the summer. They then go back to school the following year. Their teachers know this, and so they spend anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks teaching them old material. If you do the math, that's about 5 months. The school year from September to June is only 10 months long. If every single year a student loses 5 months of their education, they're theoretically robbed of half of it. That realization hit me hard. And I thought back to what it was like growing up in my neighborhood. Every single year I would see my friends languish over the summer, only to return to school in the fall 3 months behind. It happened year after year, and it was like compounding interest on the achievement gap. So when I got to Cornell, I brought together a group of friends to address those very inequities in our education system. A couple of my friends had gone to the same school as I did and had had very similar educational experiences. And we came together to come up with an idea for what educators call the summer slide. We created a summer program that addressed the academic achievement gap in the neighborhoods that we were working in by drawing on the resources that were there. We designed Practice Makes Perfect using an innovative near-peer learning model. Today, we take kids who are academically struggling in elementary and middle school. We pair them with higher-achieving role models and mentors who live in their same neighborhoods, who are 4 years older and can empathize with the adversity that they're facing. And then we put them under the supervision of college students who are aspiring teachers. We've built the first national teacher internship program in the United States. For every 2 classes, we have a certified teacher, and that teacher acts as a coach over the course of the summer. We've built a model where everyone wins. Many of our mentors have gone on to great colleges, including Cornell, and soon they're going to go back to their neighborhoods and help affect change in those areas. This is just one example of how we can take ownership of our problems and come up with innovative solutions to address them. Practice Makes Perfect shows us that we can, in fact, make a difference in our communities. Why? You can make an impact today. For this one, I want you to point at the person sitting next to you. I know pointing's rude, but they'll get over it. Ready? You can make an impact today. One more time, in unison. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You can make an impact today. Once we got Practice Makes Perfect up and running, the results started to speak for themselves. We kept kids off the streets and away from trouble. We empowered the mentors and increased their self-esteem. We made kids feel like someone really cares about them. And the teachers began to see improvements right away in their students' appreciation towards education. And our kids began to learn to read better. And they liked it. Practice Makes Perfect was changing the lives of the kids in those communities. And it was a no-brainer at that point. And so we went out and we had a story to share with philanthropists and foundations. I'm proud to say that in just the last 2 years, we've raised almost $2 million for our programs. But it wasn't all 6-figure grants. When we were starting, I pitched the idea to over 200 different people. Anyone who was willing to listen for even 5 minutes I would tell them what we were up to and what we were about to do. I started running triathlons and asking my friends for $5 and $10 donations. We've raised over $50,000 in donations of less than $100 each. We no longer live in a day and an age where you have to wait until you've had a successful career to make a difference. You all can start an Indiegogo campaign or a Kickstarter campaign and raise thousands of dollars for the things that you all care about. Social networks like Twitter and Facebook have allowed us to create groups and mobilize people to do things that we have not been able to do before. And on a personal level, we all can make a decision in our own lives to ultimately make a difference. One of my friends went to the same failing high school that I did, and he graduated from Cornell with a degree in architecture. And he's finding fulfillment and making his contribution not by designing luxury office buildings or towers, not that there's anything wrong with that, but instead by bringing the arts to a low-income neighborhood in Brooklyn. He's finding his way and using his education to lift up others. Another one of my friends graduated from NYU with a degree in business. He was raised by a set of immigrant parents who taught him to never waste food. And today, he's making his contribution and finding fulfillment, not by managing money for really rich people, not that there's anything wrong with that either, but instead by scaling up a social business that rescues leftover food from restaurants and makes it available to those who are hungry. He's using what he learned in school to help lift up others and address food shortages. The key to the future will be about local contribution, not global competition. I'm not standing up here today and asking you all to turn down your full-time offers and move into the inner city. We all have challenges in our own neighborhoods. Even in our most affluent homes, kids suffer from depression, anxiety, and stress, and they find ways to abuse drugs. We can do something about that, especially when we understand those problems firsthand. And there's more to just our time, and there's also our money and how we spend our resources. The more effective we can be with our time and the more information we have about an organization or an environment, the more effective we can be with our money. To drive that point home, I want you all to imagine that I gave each and every one of you here $100. And I asked you to use that $100 to improve your student experience here at Cornell. And then I gave you another $100, and I told you to use that money in a random country where you've never been before, and you don't really know what the culture or the language is like. Where do you think you're going to have the biggest impact? Where will you have the highest return on your investment or your donation? The reality is right here. You all know exactly what you can get for $100 here, and you know the student experience. You know what you can spend $100 on to improve your student experience, right? Like 5 fish bowls at level B. The reality is you don't know what you can get for $100 in a random country where you've never been or you've never spoken the language, right? But you know exactly what you can get with it here, where it will be most effective. John F. Kennedy once said, "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." Since we've started Practice Makes Perfect, we've served over 500 students, and after this summer, we'll have reached more than 1,000. Let's use our key to open the door to a brighter tomorrow. We can end homelessness, address poverty and hunger. Let's use the key, know your community, empower yourself and others, and you can make an impact today. Use your key to create a world where everyone can thrive, where everyone can succeed, where we can all dare to once again dream and live the American dream. I know that each and every one of you can do it because I did it. Thank you.